Hi, so today we are going to talk about introducing what's called slope-intercept form, which is one of the forms of linear equations that we'll talk about. And then we're going to spend the majority of our time today converting equations in other forms, in any form, into slope-intercept form. So just to start off with kind of like a definition or an equation, a formula, whatever you want to think of it. An equation in slope-intercept form looks like this: y equals mx plus b. And so the slope is the n in this equation, and the y-intercept is that b value. And you're always going to write your y-intercepts in the form 0, comma b. And the reason is because a y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. And this always is going to happen at a point. Let me draw you like a little, for example, if here's an xy, sorry. If here's an x and y axis, right? And if I have a line that looks like this, let's say, and I want to identify the y-intercept, where does the y, or where does that red line cross the y-axis? Where is the y-intercept? Well, it happens at this point right here. And this point for this particular line is the point 0, comma 1, 2, 3, 4. So this y-intercept is the point 0, comma 4. And if you think about any line that crosses the y-axis, where is that y-intercept going to be? Let's say this is the point 0, comma negative 2. This x value is always going to be a 0 because if it's on the y-axis, that x value is always 0. So the y-intercept is always going to be the point 0, comma a number. And so going back to the equation, this b value gives you that number. So 0, comma b. And in this equation, in this formula, the y is just the letter or the variable y, and the x is the letter or the variable x. So x and y stay x and y. It's the n and the b that are going to be numerical values. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to take this form, y equals mx plus b, slope-intercept form, and we're going to look at equations that are already in that form, and we're going to identify the slope and the y-intercept of the line. So number one, y equals 2x plus 7. If I think about kind of matching this up to y equals mx plus b, the 2 is the m, and so therefore that's my slope. And the 7 is in the spot where the b should be. So if my b value is 7, and I want to think about my y-intercept, but again, remember my y-intercept is a point. It's always the point 0, comma b. So my y-intercept is the point 0, comma 7. All right, so number 2, again, think about matching this equation up to like y equals mx plus b. So what's in place of the m, or in other words, what's the coefficient of x? It's 1/3. So my slope in this case is 1/3. And then the b value here is going to be negative 3. So my y-intercept is going to be the point 0, comma negative 3. Remember, we always have to write our y-intercept as a point 0, comma b. If I look at number 3, this is y is equal to 1 minus 2 over 5x. So this is not quite slope-intercept form. In order for it to be slope-intercept form, the x term has to come first. So I'm going to quickly kind of just reorder these terms. So I'm going to rewrite this as y is equal to negative 2 over 5x plus 1. Notice that the 1 in the original equation was positive, so it has to be positive here. And then the 2 over 5 was negative, so it has to be negative here. So now this is my equation, like y equals mx plus b. And I can read off my slope is negative 2 over 5, and my y-intercept is the point 0, 1, because that b value is 1. All right, take a minute and go through some of these problems. You can pause the video and identify the slope and the y-intercept of each line. So pause the video here, try these problems, and then when you unpause, we'll go over them. Okay, so hopefully you had a couple minutes to go through and try these. So you can check your answers here as I go through. So this one is pretty straightforward. It's already in that form, y equals mx plus b. So my slope is negative 5, my y-intercept is 0, negative 2. Number 2 is also in that form, y equals mx plus b. So my slope is 5 over 4, my y-intercept 0, 18. Number 3 looks a little different, but it is actually in that form, y equals mx plus b. So notice the 7 is the coefficient of the x. So that is the m, right? What's missing? The b is missing. Well, it's plus 1. So what can I add to 7x to make it kind of like disappear? 0. So if I had like y equals 7x plus 0, that would simplify to just y equals 7x. So that tells me that my b value is actually a 0 there. So my slope is going to be 7, and my y-intercept is the point 0, 0. All right, number 4 is kind of like the one that we had done previously. This is not quite in slope-intercept form, so I may want to just reorder this and put the x term first. Notice the coefficient of the x is negative 2, and then the 3, the constant, was positive. So that tells me my slope is negative 2, my y-intercept is 0, 3. All right, number 5 is another tricky one, kind of like number 3, but let's talk about number 5. Think about what's missing. In this case, I have this 9. It doesn't have an x with it. It's not the x term. This is the constant term. So if I think about like y equals mx plus b, this is my b. The 9 is my b. What's missing is the mx. So think about it. Let me switch colors. If I have like y is equal to something x plus 9. So now that we know that the 9 is the b, but the x like disappeared. What can I multiply x by to get it to kind of like disappear, go away? If I fill in a 0 here, 0 times x is 0. So y equals 0 times x would be y equals 0 plus 9, which just is y equals 9. So what does that tell me? That tells me that the slope here is 0, and the y-intercept is the point 0, 9. That's definitely tricky. 5 and 3 are definitely tricky. And then finally, number 6, this one's a little bit more straightforward. Don't be afraid of fractions, but here's your slope and your y-intercept. Okay, now that we can take an equation that is in slope-intercept form and pull out the information we need, which is the slope and the y-intercept, let's talk about, well, what happens if I have equations that aren't in slope-intercept form? What do? How do I identify the slope and the y-intercept? Well, to convert them to slope-intercept form, I want it to look like this, y equals mx plus b. So I have to get the y by itself. I have to solve for y. So we're going to take these equations and get y by itself, or solve for y. So number 1, I want to get y by itself. It might be helpful for me to kind of like circle the thing I want to get by itself. And this hopefully should look a little familiar. But if I want y by itself, I need to get rid of that -3. I need to move that -3 over to the other side of the equation. I do that by adding 3 to both sides. So -3 plus 3 cancels. But over on that right-hand side, I have 4x plus 3. Those are not like terms. They can't be combined. So I would write it like this, y equals 4x plus 3. So y equals 4x plus 3. I now converted this equation into slope-intercept form. So this is y equals mx plus b form, or slope-intercept form. And now I could take one step further and say, okay, well, identify the slope and identify the y-intercept. So 0 comma b, or in other words, 0 comma 3. All right, number 2 is a little trickier. So here's that y. I'm trying to get y by itself. I'm trying to solve for y, right? So if I'm trying to get that y by itself, I need to get rid of, here's my equal sign. So I need to get rid of the 4x and the -3. Remember, I get rid of my additions or subtractions first. So I can subtract 4x from both sides. 4x minus 4x cancels out. I have -3y equals, now 12 and -4x are not like terms. I can't combine them, so I just write it like that. And now I want to get y by itself. So how do I get y by itself? This means -3 times y. I can divide by -3. Remember, I got to divide everything by -3. Those cancel, and so I have y is equal to 12 divided by -3, that's -4. But then -4 over -3, they don't go in even. They can't be simplified. A negative over a negative is a positive 4 over 3x. Now, this is not quite slope-intercept form because it needs to be y equals mx plus b. So the x term has to come first. So kind of like what we have done before, we're going to flip-flop this order. We're going to put the 4/3 x first, -4. There's my equation. And if I wanted to, again, I'm not asking you to, but just to do a little bit more practice, if I said now identify the slope and the y-intercept, that's what it would be. Okay. So again, like we did before, I'm going to have you pause the video. You're just converting these equations into slope-intercept form. Remember, that just means solving for y. Pause the video, do that now, and then when you unpause, I'll go through it with you. All right, hopefully you were able to get through some of these. Again, we're trying to get y by itself. There's my y. There's my equal sign. I need to get rid of this 2. So here I can just subtract the 2 from both sides. 2 minus 2, that cancels. And so I have y equals, and then over on the right-hand side, the x and the 2, the negative x and the -2 are not like terms. They can't be combined. So there you go. There's my equation in slope-intercept form. Now, I know it didn't ask you to, but I'm going to really quick identify the slope because we haven't really done one exactly like this yet. What's in front of that x? What's that coefficient? It's a negative, but a -1. It's really a -1. So I would say the slope is -1 and the y-intercept 0 comma -2. All right? Okay, perfect. Number 4, we were trying to get y by itself. So again, we get rid of our additions and subtractions first. That 2 in front of that y, that means like 2 times y, right? So this means 2 times y. So I get rid of that multiplication last. I'm going to add x to both sides. That's going to cancel. I'm going to add x. The 4 and the x are not like terms, so I can't combine them. So I just have 4 plus x. And now again, 2y means 2 times y. How do we undo that? We can divide everything by 2. So the 2's cancel. We have y is equal to 4 divided by 2 is 2 plus, now let's think about this. We have like x over 2, but what is x over 2? What's in front of x? There's really like a 1 in front of x. So I can really think of this as being 1/2 x. So this is really, I could think of it as being like 1/2 x there. But again, I'm not quite there. I got to now reorder my terms here. I got to make sure that my x term is first. So bring that 1/2 x first, and then plus 2. The constant comes last. Okay. So these might be a little bit more tricky. Sometimes you might have fractions or have to do other things, but it's all really still the same thing. You're trying to get y by itself. If I'm trying to get y by itself, here's my equal sign. Get rid of this 1/3 x. I can do that by subtracting 1/3 x from both sides. So I have 2y equals 7 minus 1/3 x. And now my next step to get y by itself is I would divide both sides by 2. If you don't like the idea of dividing both sides by 2, because now I have like this fraction, 1/3, that I'm going to have to divide by 2. So if you don't like that idea, at this point, you could clear out that fraction. We clear out that fraction by multiplying by the least common denominator. Well, now I only have one denominator here, it's 3. So my LCD is 3. So I could real fast clear out that fraction. So 3 times 2y is 6y. 3 times 7 is 21. And this is like a 3/1. So 1 times 3 is 3. 3 times 1 is 3. Right? So now, I'll go back to the red, but I have 6y equals 21 minus 1x. And now it's going to be a lot easier for me to think about, well, how do I get y by itself? I just divide everything by 6, divide everything by 6. Y is equal to 21/6. That doesn't go in even, but 3 goes into both of those. So this can be reduced to 7/2 minus 1/6x. I know that was kind of a lot there, but again, I'm not quite done. I got to, I got to make sure that I reorder these. Y equals negative 1/6x plus 7/2. And there's my final answer. Now, it's okay that I have a fraction. If I wanted to identify the slope, it's y equals mx plus b. So the slope is negative 1/6. My y-intercept is still this b value, 0, 7/2. That b is allowed to be a fraction. All right, number 6. Again, to get y by itself, I would probably tell you to clear out the fraction. Multiply by the LCD. In this case, just like in the previous one, we only have one fraction, so the LCD is 5. I'm going to multiply everything by 5. So I have negative 20/5y equals 2x times 5 is 10x minus 5. Negative 20/5 is negative 4y equals 10x minus 5. Now it's a lot more obvious to me what I have to do to get that y by itself. This means negative 4 times y. I can just divide everything by negative 4. Y is equal to, and now I have a positive over negative, so it's a negative. 10/4, I got to reduce that fraction. 2 goes into both 10 and 4, so it's 5/2, because 10 divided by 2 is 5. 4 divided by 2 is 2. And then this 5/4 can't be simplified, but I do have a negative over a negative, and so that should be a plus. Okay, so now that we've done a couple more problems, I want you to try just a couple more of these. Again, like before, pause the video and try these, and then when you unpause, we'll go through them together. So you pause the video now, try these, and then we'll review them. Okay, so number 7, let's talk through some of these. Number 7, I notice it does have a fraction in it, but guess what? If I want to get y by itself, all I have to do is get rid of that plus 3. So I'm not really affected by that fraction at all. How do I get rid of plus 3? I can subtract 3 from both sides, and the negative 1/3 x and the 3, they're not like terms anyway. I can't combine them anyway. So it would just be this. Now, if you multiplied everything by 3 to clear out the fraction and then solve for y, that's fine. You'll get the same exact answer as I did. It's just going to take you a little bit longer. All right, number 8. Now, this fraction is with that y. It's the coefficient of that y. So here's where I would tell you, okay, maybe you want to clear out that fraction. So I would maybe want to multiply by the LCD, which is 3. So if I multiply every term by 3, it's like 3 over 1, right? So 2 times 3, I'm multiplying those fractions, that's 6. 3 times 1 is 3, y, right? And then I have negative x times 3, so negative 3x. And then I have negative 7 times 3, so negative 21. Now remember, the purpose of multiplying by that LCD is because now this fraction can easily be reduced to a whole number. And now I'm just solving for y. So get rid of the additions and subtractions first. We're going to add that 3x to both sides. I have 2y equals, now these aren't like terms, but I'm going to kind of combine 2 steps in one. They're not like terms, and I know I need my x term first. So I'm going to write this as 3x minus 21. And then to get y by itself, I'm going to divide everything by 2. Sorry, I'm running out of room. I'll put it over here. Y is equal to 3 over 2x minus 21 over 2. All right, number 9 and number 10. Hopefully they'll be a little bit easier for me because they don't have any fractions. So I'm trying to get y by itself, right? Now, if I look here, on the same side as the y, I have the negative 9x and the 7. I got to get rid of both of those, but they're both like being added or subtracted to the y. So let me start with the 9x, and I could have started with the 7, but the opposite of negative 9x is plus 9x. So if I add 9x to both sides, now I have y plus 7 equals 0 plus 9x, which is just 9x, because I don't really need to worry about the 0. Now I still got to get rid of that 7, so I'm going to subtract 7, and I have y is equal to 9x minus 7. Again, they're not like terms. I want to make sure that my x term comes before that constant. The negative 7 is my constant. And then finally, number 10, we're trying to get the y by itself. So we're going to get rid of that 8x. We're going to subtract 8x from both sides first. We have 2y equals, I'm going to write the x term first. So that negative 8x is going to kind of move in front. And then I'm going to have that negative 16. And then to get y by itself, I'm going to divide both sides by 2, everything by 2. And I have y is equal to negative 8 over 2 is negative 4x. And negative 16 divided by 2 is negative 8. So there's my equation. And again, what was the purpose of this? I was trying to get these equations into what we call slope-intercept form. Or in other words, y equals mx plus b. And why do I care about slope-intercept form? Because I can really easily read off the slope and the y-intercept. So in number 9, if I were to say to you, hey, here's this equation, y minus 9x plus 7 equals 0. Tell me the slope, tell me the y-intercept. Before you answer that question, you're got to do this work that I have here in red, solving for y, and then you can say, oh, the slope is 9, the y-intercept is the point 0, negative 7. That's all I have for you. Thank you so much for watching. and have a